40 things that no man over 40 should have. Then I read California about the House of Horrors of that terrible situation with the family who would abuse 13 kids. It's so awful, it's unbelievable. And I thought, in view of reaching out in neighbor love, where were the neighbors? The neighborhood looked like my neighborhood. And I thought, in our society, isn't it? Then we read that the president huddles with Chuck Schumer to see the government from shutting down again. And now the government has shut down, at least in part, again. I don't say that because I just want to preach from the newspaper, and some people will say that's all you do is preach from the newspaper. I say these things to introduce a topic. In so many ways, we live in a broken world. It doesn't mean that everything is terrible. It doesn't mean that there isn't general grace. It doesn't mean that we don't have arts and high society. It doesn't mean that we don't have many wonderful things. The human condition is pervasively broken and needs to be fixed. Everything this morning, and I will explain. I want to go to that classic text where he said, Lord, with all your heart and your soul and your mind, and you shall reach out and you shall love your neighbor. And by the way, the forgotten commandment is, you shall love yourself. But the part I want to pick up in this, and I have preached in the past on love of God and love of neighbor and self, and I accept that. But the part that I haven't from is a topic called the whole person in a broken world. I confess it's not my idea, that topic. I read a book some 30 or 40 years ago by Paul Tournier. It was a Swiss physician who wrote a book on that topic, but I have to bear responsibility for the sermon, about being a whole person. So what does it mean to be a whole person? I want to pick up on the focus that you love God, your neighbor, and yourself with the whole mind and soul and heart. And I want to add a couple of other parts, and I want to focus upon the parts of the person. Love God and your neighbor as you love yourself with your whole person, and not just a part of your person, and not just the part that you like. Now, I have found over the years that we're all different. We all know that, don't we? But what I've also found, sometimes we think that the way we are is the way everybody else should be. Then we get in trouble because they're not that way. And we wonder about their behaviors, how crazy they seem, because they're not crazy to them, they're crazy to us. And so we need to understand, when we talk about the whole person, we're talking about something that none of us is completely good at. We can't perfect it all because we're different. But the goal is to serve God and respond to the broken world with a whole person in some part to bear witness to our faith. There are three key words in this text in Matthew. The first one is heart. Cardiac has got to come from cardia. It's a Greek word. It means the source of the inner life. It means emotion. It means who we are as a person and all of these kinds of things, and it includes a physical element. Another word is the word soul. You shall love God with your soul. The soul comes from the word psyche, which has got to be the background for psyche or psychology. And it has to do with the earthly life itself, also the seat of the inner life, and especially that part which transcends the earthly. And you begin to see that when Jesus used these three words in this text, that the meanings sort of overlap. So if you try to figure out a scientific solution to what he's trying to say, it's really a picture. He's saying, picture this. As persons, we have a heart. And as persons, we have a soul. We are a soul. And as persons, we also have this. The mind is a different word. Understanding, intelligence, thinking. They overlap. But my focus this morning is I would like to affirm the whole person. The first part is the mind. I've been around a while. I passed American Baptist churches, and I was privileged to do that. I know that there are people in our churches who are going to tell you, when you come in the doors, you should leave your mind outside because we don't think in here. This is an emotional experience. right? I've heard it a number of times, and if I haven't heard it, I've experienced it. I'm going to get to the emotion, and I'm going to affirm that. But I can't leave my mind in the parking lot. I'm just not there. And I'm not sure He's called us to go there. Because He's given us the mind, and we say, well, why don't we just affirm the emotion and not the mind? Because God made us with minds. It's the way He made us. We are made in His image, and this is part of the image. Christian thought the mind is a terrible thing to waste. There are two key words for conversion in the New Testament. Fundamentally crystal clear words. The first one about God, it comes from the word epistrepho, means turn. It's 180 degrees. You turn in a new direction. And you may say, well, that's not so significant, but it's like driving from here to the coast, and you say it's going to take all day to get there, and maybe several days, but the thing is, every mile, you look at it, and you've gone a mile. And you continue to go, and you continue to go, and you continue to go. So you live in a new direction. The other New Testament, the major word, is change of mind, a different word of mind. It's metanoia. And I'm thinking to myself, that's the problem I'm thinking. Do we really change our minds much? I don't know if we do. But one of the reasons why it's so hard for people to come to Jesus is because it means they have to change their mind. Or God has to change it for them. Amen. Something has to happen. Talk of mind. Fundamentally, it's a change of mind. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, said Paul in Philippians 2:5, a great aspiration. There was a movie long ago about a mathematician named John Forbes who had done great and wondrous things, but then he got schizophrenia. And the movie is called The Beautiful Mind. And it's about his life and how he's able to put that together again. Just an illustration of how important the mind is. God has called us to commit our minds to Him. He's called us to submit our hearts to Him. The heart is the emotional side, the feeling part, the expressive part, the artistic part. The of it is at the heart of it. You have to put your heart into it. I was pastor in Youngstown for 14 years in Ohio, and one time we went down to the fundamental place on the big auditorium, and Tony Bennett came and sang, and it was a wonderful concert. I liked him better as he got older, but that's an aside. Anyway, he sang, and then he sang his signature song, and he proclaimed in his song that he had left his heart. Now, nobody took that literally. He was singing in Youngstown, Ohio, and he was well received, and people clapped after this signature song. So we know that the heart is at the heart of emotions. We know that the emotions are important. We know that God has called us to submit. Has He not? I just help falling in love with you. I'm a grown man, and I just can't help it. That's what we're saying. That's what we're singing, isn't it? That's part of what it means. Romans 10:9, you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and you believe in your heart that God has raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. My text is very simple, that you come with both of your mouth, it confesses, and your heart believes, and it's an integrated experience. They go together. Harold Ockenby was president at Park Street in Boston for 32 years. He was the founding president, I think, at Fuller Seminary, and he became at Gordon Conwell Seminary during my life in Massachusetts. I've met him 2 or 3 times. I tell you that I knew him. I'm not trying to name drop. But he was the kind of a person, he reminded me a little stuffy. But if you asked him a question, you could see his mind and his heart start to go to work, and they worked together. It was an amazing thing. That's what we're trying to say. It's not just the mind. It's not just the heart. But it's all of it together. Amen. My wife and I used to watch that, which is us, and humor, Heart to Heart. Yeah. Well, we liked that program emotionally. And we liked the names, Jonathan and Jennifer. So guess what we did? We named our son Jonathan and our daughter Jennifer. We never asked them if they liked it. It was a hard decision. Because we liked Jonathan meant gifted. My daughter's name is N.E. with Green Gables, so emotionally it worked for us. But with our mind on it, we wanted good names. My mother passed about 2 months ago, almost 3. I told her, I hadn't had many talks like this, but I told her, I thanked her for my name. I like my name. Thank you for giving me a nice name that I'm comfortable with. And it was a heart thing. So the heart is part of it. Love God with your soul. That's a little more difficult to get a handle on. The soul comes from the word psyche. Now, some theologians have conversations with you and say, are you a bipart or a tripart, three-parts Christian? Do you believe in the body and soul and they're one and the same, or do you believe in the body and mind and soul? Now, I'm so happy now with the joy of that distinction, or you're saying, what is he talking about? I think it's the latter, isn't it? So don't worry about it, but when you down into the question, I think there's an element of this that's in the text, which the soul, or the psyche, there's an earthy element, we're souls that we live in this life, but there's an element of soul in that word which is eternal. SOS. Save our souls. At a life-saving station, do we simply mean the saving of physical life? We mean that. But I think when we say SOS, we mean there's something more here. There's something that is eternal as well. Because you can save your life in this world, but that's not going to do you much good for the next one unless somehow you've committed that eternal part of us, that yearning part for God, the part that needs faith, the part that brings us to the other side when we move forward from this life to the next one to see the Lord face to face. People talk about near-death experiences. I've had one at 13. Before we knew how to talk about it. In a sense, your whole life, people's life, it does. But God speaks to me eternally